1,500 rooms were contained within the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg as the 20th century opened. It boasted nearly 2,000 windows and more than 100 individual staircases spanning over 600 feet along the banks of the Neva River. Its three-story Baroque facade, clad in striking shades of green and white, towered above the frozen water, marking it as the grandest royal residence anywhere in Europe. In the winter of 1901, this vast monument was the personal home of a single man, Tsar Nicholas II, emperor and autocrat of all the Russias. Yet the popular image of a Russian monarch inside his palace bears little resemblance to reality. Nicholas spent the vast majority of his working hours confined to a single chamber, a compact, oak-paneled study on the second floor. Situated in the building's northwestern corner, it was barely larger than an ordinary family living room. Every morning, he sat at the exact same desk, drank the exact same tea, and followed a rigid, minute-by-minute schedule. The ruler of a territory covering 1/6 of the Earth's landmass lived like a prisoner, bound to his own daily planner. The disconnect between the towering grandeur of the palace and the modest scale of the Tsar's personal routine explains the ultimate collapse of the Romanov dynasty more clearly than any political treatise ever could. This was how a single day unfolded for Tsar Nicholas II inside the Winter Palace in 1901. His morning began at 8:30. There were no bugle calls, elaborate rituals, or ceremonial greetings. Nicholas simply woke up. The bedroom he shared with Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna was furnished in Karelian birch and hung with heavy English cotton drapes featuring red floral patterns against green leaves. A large folding screen separated their sleeping area from a small sitting room containing wicker chairs for the children. Mounted against one wall was a folding display case filled with sacred Orthodox icons. Tucked behind the screen was a single, large bed. Unlike nearly all European royalty of the era, who maintained separate bedrooms or even entire separate wings of a palace, Nicholas and Alexandra slept together. Eyewitness accounts consistently confirm that the couple shared a genuine and deeply tender devotion. That single shared bed was one of many intimate choices that set them apart from their royal peers across the continent. By 9 o'clock, Nicholas was dressed and taking his morning tea. He drank this first cup in the private suite, either alone or alongside Alexandra. Breakfast was a light, functional affair, rather than a lavish feast. These rooms were entirely distinct from the vast state halls shown to foreign guests. The private apartments occupied a modest portion of the second floor, accessible through the Saltykov entrance, which was strictly reserved for the sovereign, the Tsarina, and their immediate family. Architect Alexander Krasovsky had remodeled these quarters in 1895, when the young imperial couple first took residence, harmonizing Art Nouveau influences with English Gothic elements to suit Alexandra's preferences. As a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, raised in the German region of Hesse, she preferred her home to mirror an English country house rather than a cold Russian palace. Around 9:30, Nicholas stepped outside for his morning walk. During January and February, this meant braving the severe St. Petersburg winter, where temperatures along the Neva frequently plummeted past 20 degrees below 0 Celsius. The river froze into a solid sheet of ice capable of supporting heavy foot traffic. Daylight arrived late and dissolved quickly, while the icy crust coating the palace walls caught the pale morning sun, turning the green facades into sheets of muted gold. Nicholas went outdoors, regardless of the weather. He was easily the most physically active monarch the Romanov line had ever seen. From his youth, he had maintained a disciplined exercise regimen, enjoying long hikes, kayaking, swimming, winter skating, and billiards. He lifted weights to build up his frame as he stood roughly 5 feet 6 inches tall, noticeably shorter than the towering Romanov men around him, particularly his imposing uncles. Though he remained wiry and lean despite his physical efforts, he moved with a quiet, calm assurance, whether on horseback or walking briskly along the river embankment. He had a characteristic nervous habit of smoothing his mustache upward with the back of his hand, but his most memorable feature was his eyes. Visitors invariably commented on their striking, clear Danish blue hue, inherited from his mother, Empress Maria Fyodorovna. Those eyes projected an impression of serene attention, which observers interpreted either as deep contemplation or as a sign of a mind drifting elsewhere. His morning walk lasted roughly 30 minutes. At 10 o'clock, the formal business of governing began, as Nicholas returned to his study. This room, where he spent most of his waking hours, revealed much about his character and priorities. Designed in the English Gothic style, it featured rich oak wall paneling, complemented by green and yellow silk drapes framing the double windows. A heavy Gothic fireplace carved with heraldic griffins and lions, symbols drawn from both the Romanov line and Alexandra's house of Hesse-Darmstadt, dominated one side of the room. On his desk sat small porcelain busts of his grandfather, Emperor Alexander II, and his great-grandfather, Nicholas I. Family photographs covered almost every flat surface, and a piano stood in the corner, where Nicholas and Alexandra sometimes played duets together during quiet evenings. From 10 until roughly 1 in the afternoon, Nicholas received official reports. Up to 3 ministers would enter the study in succession to present their administrative business. This was the primary mechanism through which the empire was governed, and it was strikingly individualized. In 1901, Russia possessed no prime minister and held no collective cabinet meetings comparable to those in Britain or France. Instead, the autocracy functioned entirely through one-on-one audiences. Each minister entered alone, outlined his department's affairs, answered questions, and departed. The next minister would then be called in. There was no shared council, no cross-departmental debate, and no opportunity for officials to critique or build upon one another's ideas. The entire machinery of state relied on one man's ability to maintain every thread of imperial policy inside his own head. Nicholas met each official face-to-face in that quiet room, examining the documents they presented, signing decrees, and issuing directions, or, far more frequently, postponing decisions. This reflected one of the primary contradictions of his leadership. Nicholas possessed an exceptional memory. His war minister, General Alexander Rodiger, later noted that the Tsar could recall the precise name, number, and history of every regiment in the Russian army, down to the records of individual soldiers and details from reports read months prior. Yet this sharp memory was paired with a deep indecisiveness. He harbored a quiet distrust toward most of his ministers, suspecting they were intellectually sharper than he was, or that they sought to encroach upon his absolute authority. As a result, he would listen patiently, keep his thoughts guarded, and sometimes express agreement in person only to countermand the official's recommendations after the man had left the room. Between ministerial briefings and 1 in the afternoon, Nicholas granted brief audiences to select visitors, including foreign envoys, high-ranking military officers, and members of the Romanov family bringing personal petitions. These meetings took place either in the study or, for formal occasions, in the adjacent staterooms of the private suite. The nearby Gothic library was often utilized when a more impressive backdrop was required. This 2-level room featured solid walnut bookcases rising to a mezzanine connected by a delicate spiral staircase. Embossed gilded leather covered the upper walls, and the massive fireplace bearing the family crests anchored the space. Remarkably, this was the only room in Nicholas's personal apartments to survive the destruction of 1917 completely intact, and it remains visible today within the State Hermitage Museum. At 1 o'clock, the day shifted from statecraft to domestic life. An official midday meal was served in the small dining room of the private apartments. This was rarely a private gathering. Alexandra joined Nicholas, and the table was usually shared with visiting diplomats, relatives, or senior court officials. Conversation followed strict court protocol, with specific topics encouraged and political matters largely avoided, unless introduced by the Tsar himself, a rare occurrence over lunch. While this quiet family meal was underway, the surrounding palace functioned like a bustling city. More than 400 massive stoves burned continuously throughout the winter, fed by a sophisticated hot air heating network installed following the catastrophic fire of 1837. The system pushed warm air from basement furnaces through hidden flues built directly into the thick masonry walls. Within those same walls ran a hidden labyrinth of service corridors where hundreds of palace staff performed their duties. Court etiquette strictly forbade servants from appearing in the main state halls while the imperial family was present. They cleaned, cooked, and maintained the facility entirely out of sight, moving behind gilded paneling and marble walls. The layout was intentionally designed to allow the Tsar and his family to walk through endless suites of polished floors and painted ceilings without ever witnessing the immense physical labor required to sustain their environment. The sheer scale of this invisible operation was immense. The Winter Palace contained nearly 1,900 doors, every one requiring polished hardware and maintained hinges. Thousands of window panes had to be kept clean, marble staircases swept, and wood stoves continually stoked. In the vast attic spaces beneath the roof, many servants actually lived. These upper quarters were so vast and loosely monitored that one former employee managed to move his entire family back into the attic after his employment had ended. They lived there unnoticed for a considerable time, even smuggling a live cow into the attic to ensure a fresh supply of milk. Palace officials only discovered their presence when the smell eventually betrayed them. Following lunch, around 2 in the afternoon, Nicholas took tea once more in the private rooms alongside Alexandra and close companions. He then transitioned to what was widely considered his favorite hour of the day. From 2:30 until 4, Nicholas went outdoors with his children. In the winter of 1901, he had 3 young daughters, 5-year-old Olga, 3-year-old Tatiana, and 2-year-old Maria. His 4th daughter, Anastasia, would be born later that summer at Peterhof Palace. There was still no male heir. The long-awaited son, whose medical condition would eventually weigh so heavily on the family, would not be born until 1904. In early 1901, however, those future tragedies were still far off. Nicholas walked through the snowy grounds with his daughters, wrapped in warm coats and accompanied by nursemaids and his beloved dogs. Olga, the eldest, was already showing a bold and direct personality, often speaking her mind with a bluntness that might have served a reigning Tsar far better than her father's hesitant nature. Tatiana was quieter and more observant, while young Maria was often carried through the snow. Nicholas was an exceptionally attentive father, frequently kneeling in the snow, playing games, and letting his daughters climb over him. In these moments, the formal weight of his office fell away entirely. He was also accompanied by his English collies, a breed he kept continuously throughout his life. His favorite in his youth had been a collie named Raven, given to him at 17. After Raven died in 1895, Nicholas continued to keep collies, and they were a constant presence on his daily walks. The grounds where they walked featured a recent addition commissioned by Alexandra. Upon moving into the Winter Palace in 1895, she had been deeply uncomfortable with the fact that passers-by on the public parade ground could look directly into the windows of their private apartments. She ordered the construction of a walled garden on the site, designed by Georg Kupalt, the director of Riga's public parks. High stone walls and heavy iron gates enclosed the space, providing the family with an outdoor retreat isolated from the city outside. This impulse to retreat to build barriers and to isolate the household from public view became a defining characteristic of Nicholas and Alexandra's reign. While it provided them with a sense of personal security, it progressively disconnected them from the reality of the country they governed. At 4 o'clock, Nicholas returned to his study for his afternoon work session. More reports, dispatches, and official paperwork awaited him. Communications from the foreign ministry, military updates, reports from provincial governors across the vast empire, budget requests from the finance ministry, petitions from the Holy Synod, and diplomatic cables from embassies in London, Paris, Berlin, and Vienna. Russia spanned 11 time zones, stretching from Poland to the Pacific, and every major administrative decision funneled directly to a single desk in this one room. There were no delegated working groups or cabinet ministers authorized to act independently. Nicholas had inherited an absolute system built for a far smaller, simpler state. Yet, he attempted to manage a complex 20th century empire through sheer personal labor, believing it was his sacred duty before God to preserve his authority undiminished. He smoked constantly as he worked, going through more than 25 cigarettes a day, a habit developed during his early military service. Smoke hung heavily in the oak-paneled study, mixing with the scent of burning wood from the fireplace and the rich leather furniture. Smoking was one of his very few personal vices. He drank in moderation, avoided gambling, and remained completely devoted to his wife. The cigarettes served as his primary outlet for stress. Work paused briefly at 5 o'clock for family tea. Nicholas, Alexandra, and the children gathered in their private quarters for a daily ritual he protected with absolute discipline. No minister was permitted to interrupt this hour, and no state messages were delivered. It offered him a reliable sanctuary where he could set aside imperial burdens and simply sit with his family. Alexandra frequently worked on embroidery on the sofa, while the children played quietly nearby on the carpet among the Karelian birch furniture. The icon case in the corner glowed softly under the light of devotional candles. Outside, the St. Petersburg sky turned completely dark early in the afternoon, with the frozen Neva hidden in the cold night. Inside, the suite was warm and quiet, by all accounts, the most tranquil part of his daily routine. At 5:30, Nicholas returned to his desk for his final and often longest work stretch of the day, which lasted until 8 in the evening. This was 2.5 hours of uninterrupted reading, annotating, and signing documents in complete silence. No private secretary assisted him in the room. He examined every paper personally, writing comments directly into the margins and signing orders by his own hand. It was a painstaking, highly bureaucratic style of personal governance that had been handed down through 3 generations of Romanov rulers before him. By 8 o'clock in the evening, the Tsar's heavy administrative schedule was complete, and he joined his family for dinner. Later in the evening, after the children were asleep, he often returned to his study one last time to write in his personal diary, recording weather observations, family moments, and brief notes on the day's visitors in the same quiet, measured tone that characterized his entire life. The daily routine was meticulous, orderly, and deeply predictable. Yet behind the thick walls of the Winter Palace and the quiet retreat of the oak-paneled study, the vast, turbulent empire Nicholas ruled was already changing rapidly, moving toward a future that his carefully structured world was utterly unprepared to meet. As evening fell, Nicholas II remained alone at his desk, sorting through the endless paperwork of a vast empire. A solitary autocrat bound to a tradition that expected one human being to personally direct the lives of millions of subjects. By 8 in the evening, official business gave way to court society. Dinner was served either in the private family dining quarters or within one of the palace's immense grand halls, depending on the guest list. These meals were formal affairs in every detail. Servants in full court livery stood behind the chairs, and the tables were set with imperial porcelain bearing the Romanov double-headed eagle. Modern electric lights, installed throughout the palace in the 1890s, blazed alongside traditional candelabras. The meals were French in technique and structure, served in multiple courses following a court tradition established over a century earlier. Strict protocol governed every detail: seating order, conversational timing, and who possessed the right to speak directly to the emperor. High diplomats, senior generals, and prominent aristocrats moved through these suppers on a schedule managed by the Ministry of the Imperial Court. For major state receptions, the spectacle expanded dramatically. The imperial family first gathered in the Malachite Room, a reception hall decorated with over 2 tons of vibrant green Ural malachite fashioned into columns, fireplaces, and ornamental vases. From there, the royal procession moved through the Arabian Hall, where aligned doorways formed a vast enfilade stretching straight through the principal state apartments toward the Jordan staircase. This grand entryway was the architectural heart of the Winter Palace. Built from white marble and accented with gilded plasterwork, its expansive windows flooded the space with light reflected off the Neva River. Foreign dignitaries and visiting envoys ascended those steps for official audiences, passing through halls engineered to broadcast a single message. This was the center of the world's absolute autocracy. Yet whether the night brought a small family dinner or a major state function with hundreds of guests, the conclusion was identical. Once the meal ended, Nicholas retired to his private suites. The household rule was absolute. After dinner, political discussions were strictly forbidden. The remaining hours belonged entirely to the family. Ministers understood this boundary, courtiers respected it, and foreign diplomats who had traveled vast distances knew that once the emperor stepped out of the public eye, official access was over. Whatever business remained unfinished would simply wait until 10 o'clock the following morning. In the quiet of their private rooms, Alexandra often read aloud in English, the language the couple shared in intimate conversation, as both had spoken it fluently since childhood. Nicholas might play the piano or sit beside her looking through photo albums. He was an enthusiastic amateur photographer who constantly recorded his family's private world with an early handheld Kodak camera. Around 1900, he took what stands as one of history's earliest self-portraits, holding the camera at arm's length in his study and aiming it back at himself. The photograph captures a slim bearded man in a military tunic staring quietly into the lens with light blue eyes, isolated inside his oak-paneled sanctuary. Before going to sleep, Nicholas sat down to write in his diary. Using black ink and a neat, compact hand, he wrote at his desk or on the bedroom sofa. He had kept this journal every single day since the age of 14, starting at the Gatchina Palace in 1882. He had never missed a day in nearly 2 decades, and by the end of his life, his diary would expand to 51 distinct volumes. It remains one of the most remarkable personal records in Russian history, though not for what it explains about power. The journal says almost nothing about statecraft, foreign policy, or the political maneuvers taking place within the capital. Roughly 90% of the text describes basic personal routines: what time he woke up, the local weather, the length of his daily walk, who joined the family for dinner, and how many cigarettes he smoked. It reads like the journal of a quiet country gentleman rather than the ruler of an autocratic power. Years later, on January 9, 1905, the day known as Bloody Sunday, when imperial troops fired on peaceful marchers outside the Winter Palace, leaving over 100 dead, Nicholas sat down to record the day's events. He acknowledged the serious unrest and noted that many had been killed and wounded before seamlessly recording what time he took his afternoon tea and who had walked with him that afternoon. In 1901, that crisis was still 4 years in the future. Yet deep societal fractures were already spreading. University students were protesting across the empire. Industrial workers in expanding cities were organizing against long hours and low wages, living in unsanitary urban tenements created by rapid industrialization. Major labor strikes had disrupted Moscow and St. Petersburg in preceding years, and within a few seasons, the Tsar's uncle, Grand Duke Sergei, would be killed by a revolutionary bomb. Yet, none of this disturbed the emperor's domestic routine. The daily schedule remained fixed: tea at 9, ministers at 10, a walk with his children at 2:30, dinner at 8, and diary before bed. The physical palace was also changing, at least on the surface. In 1901, crews repainted the exterior of the Winter Palace, replacing its traditional pale ochre with a deep brick red to match the red sandstone wall built around Alexandra's private garden. Architect Nikolai Kramskoy submitted a detailed estimate of 15,639 rubles for the work, which Nicholas personally approved. For years to come, the palace stood along the Neva in heavy terracotta red, a new look for a structure operating on internal routines unchanged for half a century. On June 18th of that same year, Alexandra gave birth to their fourth daughter, Anastasia, at Peterhof Palace outside the capital. The extended imperial family felt quiet disappointment, having hoped for a male heir to secure the succession. Nicholas took a solitary walk through the grounds to compose himself before going in to see his wife and newborn child. The immense pressure for a son weighed heavily on the imperial household, but publicly the Tsar said nothing. He returned to his schedule and the routine held. It held through 1901, 1902, and 1903, when the Winter Palace held its final magnificent imperial ball, a historical costume event where Nicholas dressed as Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich, and nearly 400 guests danced in the Nicholas Hall and Concert Hall until late at night. It held through the opening losses of the disastrous war with Japan in 1904. It held until January 1905, when gunfire outside the palace gates destroyed the illusion that the residence could isolate its occupants from the outside world. After Bloody Sunday, Nicholas and Alexandra abandoned the Winter Palace forever. They moved permanently to the Alexander Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, 15 miles south of St. Petersburg, where the surrounding parklands were easier to secure and the public was kept at a distance. The Winter Palace was never used as a family home again. From 1905 onward, it served strictly for official state events, growing increasingly quiet until the revolutions of 1917 emptied its halls for good. In 1901, however, those events belonged to the unimagined future. The Tsar still lived in the palace, walking the long corridors between the Malachite room and his personal study. Each morning, he received 3 ministers in his oak-paneled room beside the Gothic fireplace. Each afternoon, he walked with his daughters, Olga, Tatiana, and Maria, along the frozen Neva, while his dogs trotted beside him across the snow. And every evening, he sat down to record his day in the same careful hand he had used since youth. 1,500 rooms, 400 heating stoves, unseen servants moving through hidden passageways inside the walls. And at the center of it all, a quiet, blue-eyed man sitting at his desk, signing state papers and watching the clock until it was time for afternoon tea. It was the most ordinary domestic existence taking place inside the most extraordinary palace on earth. The central tragedy of Nicholas II was that he could not recognize the gap between his small private world and the immense reality outside. And that blindness cost him his throne, his empire, and his life. If you enjoyed this look into history, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel so more viewers can find our content. Leave a comment below and let us know which historical figure's daily routine you would like us to explore next.